Hello gamers, I'm Sean Fox. You're watching PlayStation News Now, your source of news, rumour reviews and video game discussion. In today's news, Sony Interactive Entertainment revealed during an investors relations meeting, PlayStation Plus has now hit 21 million paid subscribers on the PlayStation 4, with over 60 million PlayStation Plus subscribers across the PlayStation family using the PlayStation Network. A major milestone indeed, especially given the fact that just 18 months ago, PlayStation 4 PlayStation Plus subscriptions were a respectable 10.9 million active users. That figure has effectively doubled since then, and Sony must be very pleased with themselves. And while we're talking about Sony's Investors Day, this news courtesy of JillShockers.com. So during the Sony Investors Day currently being held in Tokyo, Sony Interactive Entertainment President Andrew House was asked if the PlayStation 4 finally reached its peak and expectations for the performance of the first-party games during the current fiscal year. House mentioned that it's difficult to answer on whether PlayStation 4 has reached its peak or not, primarily because looking at past cycles, the software peak and hardware peak normally don't come at the same time, but the software peak happens 1 year after the hardware one. Now, according to House, the goal for PlayStation 4 is to maintain the current momentum until either fiscal year 2017 or 2018, meaning until March 2018 or 2019. The console might be close to peak now, but House feels that there is still more margin to improve and increase its performance. House also mentioned that the company expects a very good fiscal year for its first-party games. The games showcased at E3 included games for both 2016 and 2017, and that's why this is the right time to be confident about Sony's first-party game lineup. Responding to another question, House explained that in the past, Sony has been very conservative in the past for what concerns revenue predictions because they had to consider what the impact the mobile market could have had on the business, making drawing a precise outlook difficult. Now, PlayStation 4 is on its third year and the momentum is continuing, so the company is now more confident and feels that the business is more stable. Additionally, the company noticed that the contribution of network sales is more significant than in the past. The pattern is different than what we've seen in the PlayStation 3 era, for example, as PlayStation Plus generates very stable profit. The fact that the financial outlook shifted to a less conservative stance reflects that as well. So the future looks very bright for all platform holders, with new hardware, IP and VR set to take place during 2016 going forward. There's never been so many options for gamers. Now, Sony Interactive Entertainment President Andrew House was asked if the company sees Microsoft's moves towards the unification of the Xbox One and Windows ecosystem as a threat. House explained that Sony's strategy isn't changing, and it remains to be seen if there is indeed a large consumer demand for that. Here's a quote: "I always hesitate to be drawn into discussions on someone else's strategy. I'm more than happy to talk about our own strategy. Yeah, there was a big emphasis from the folks at Microsoft on Xbox and PC crossplay, and it remains to be seen on whether there is a latent large consumer demand for that. But we don't see it as really affecting or prompting any changes in our thought process and strategy. We have always tended to believe that a proprietary ecosystem offering a very well crafted unified client experience is the way to go, and that sort of remains our strategy." End of quote. Other details that came out of Sony's investors meeting came directly from Sony Interactive Entertainment President Andrew House, who shed some light on the upcoming PlayStation Neo. House mentioned that this is the first time for Sony to offer an hardware upgrade in the middle of the life cycle of a console. That said, they're not going to do regular upgrades akin to, say, the PC or mobile markets. The company is also not pursuing a generational hardware change. He then explained that in the mobile business, users are expected to upgrade their hardware every 1 or 2 years, but that's not the case in the console business, where the cycle is at least 5 or 6 years. Yet there's potential, and that's why the latest and greatest technology will be introduced in the middle of the life cycle. A key factor is still the importance of the customer, so Sony intends to maintain one console world with the same software for both consoles. So Sony seem firm on their PlayStation 4 Neo plans, with senior Sony figure Jim Ryan setting the record straight in regards to Xbox Scorpio hardware having the power edge by stating, "The company has not revealed PlayStation 4 Neo specs, we have only revealed the platform exists. It is premature to start talking about which console has the power advantage until we share more details on PlayStation 4 Neo, suggesting the media may be jumping the gun a bit." Look, here's my thing. Let's assume PlayStation 4 Neo is 4.5 T-flops for the time being, and we already know Xbox Scorpio is a confirmed 6 T-flops of power. Well, that extra 1.5 T-flops of power advantage won't really count for anything in terms of multi-platform games, since we know the PlayStation 4 has had a power advantage over Xbox One for some time, yet all multiplats are more or less the same across both platforms. Let's call it parity for parity's sake. I don't know, but you can expect all games to look and perform the same across both hardware revisions. Also, both Sony and Microsoft have kinda put themselves in a corner by promising full backward and full forward compatibility. Neither hardware revisions will have exclusive games, no game gets left behind according to Xbox head Phil Spencer, so the extra power of Neo and Scorpio will likely be used to output 4K and tighten up frame rates where and when possible. I wouldn't even expect either console to output 4K at 60 frames per second. 4K games will very likely perform at 4K and 30 frames per second, assuming Sony ups their PlayStation 4 Neo specs, so theoretically it won't really matter at all to existing gamers who don't yet have plans to upgrade their current 1080p displays, because most likely most 4K games will still run at 30 frames per second. Now, I honestly don't see the benefit in investing your hard-earned money in either Neo or Scorpio unless you are seriously invested in 4K. That's not to say you shouldn't buy into all this lovely technology, just that you really should be well informed before you take that leap. Sony weren't the only ones talking to investors about the future of their game brand, as Nintendo are really talking more and more about their new hardware, the Nintendo NX. So how does Nintendo fit into all this? Well, during Nintendo's general meeting of shareholders, genius game creator Shigeru Miyamoto talked about E3, explaining why the NX was not showcased and the company's plans for virtual reality. Now get this, Nintendo did not show or detail Nintendo NX at E3 because the company feared risk of imitation by competitors if the NX console was showcased too early. Apparently, Nintendo has a new idea in the works for their new platform. Now, where have we heard that before? Now, obviously, Nintendo are taking a very different approach and direction to both Sony and Microsoft, and those companies' hardware designs are essentially done. It does seem a little odd to me that Nintendo are concerned about copycats, since both Sony and Microsoft have done pretty well by this generation by not copying Nintendo. But hey, it's Nintendo's right to protect whatever groundbreaking, revolutionary new feature NX will feature. I just hope for Nintendo's sake this is not all PR-induced hot air, as Nintendo fans are more and more frustrated with the company's track record over recent years. The house that made Mario is also working on virtual reality, but apparently they seem to be aiming to a different approach compared to the headsets that have already been released or announced. Keep your eye on Nintendo, it would be a fool that counts this innovative company out. And in this final segment, some interesting news recently surfaced regarding how developers and publishers feel about PlayStation 4 Neo and Xbox Scorpio hardware revisions. Now, the biggest story leading up to E3 2016 and of the show itself was the existence of new hardware from Sony, Microsoft and Nintendo that will be released over the course of the next year. As the video game industry shifts to a new business model where consoles will be refreshed at a much faster pace, the Associated Press spoke to Microsoft, GTA publisher Take-Two and Nintendo for insight on what this means for the future. Now, many of you will know by now, at E3 Microsoft unveiled Project Scorpio, a stronger version of the company's Xbox One, which is due to come holiday 2017, alongside the Xbox One S, a redesign of its existing system that adds 4K video output. Here's a quote. "We're trying to shift the culture and put the power of when to upgrade in the hands of the gamers as opposed to it being driven by technology or corporate initiative," said Shannon Loftis, head of publishing at Microsoft Game Studios, during an interview with the Associated Press. Loftis went on to say, "I hope that we don't frustrate gamers, we're responding to them. The feedback we received is that they want more choices." End of quote. So Take-Two Interactive CEO Strauss Zelnick waded in, and I quote, "I don't see it making games more expensive. I think new hardware developments that give us more powerful platforms to work on but are still compatible with the current generation is great news. But we're still pushing the envelope on current gen consoles, so it's not like we're screaming for more power." End of quote. Now, prior to the E3 event, Sony announced the existence of a new PlayStation 4 that will support 4K resolution and improved graphics. Nintendo announced the existence of codename NX, but the Japanese game maker is still tight-lipped on the subject despite its pending release of March 2017. Here's a quote from Nintendo. "In terms of NX, there's an idea that we're working on," said Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto. "That's why we can't share anything at this point, and I don't want to comment on other companies. If it was just a matter of following advancements in technology, things would be coming out a lot quicker." End of quote. And that's a nice piece written by Jose Otero, an editor at IGN and host of Nintendo Voice Chat. Which unfortunately brings us to the end of another video. If you enjoyed the content, go ahead, poke the like button, and thanks to everybody sharing our videos, helping us reach more PlayStation fans. We really couldn't do it without you. And do subscribe for more PlayStation news, rumor and reviews. So until next time, play games, not corporations. Thanks for watching, everybody.